Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be talking about objects and classes, right? So when you're creating it, rather we define a class to be a blueprint or a template from which objects are created, right? And an object is basically a creation of a class, right? So we have a lot of classes in Java from which you can create objects. For instance, like when we're using the scanner class, right? When you're using that scanner class, it's a class available within the Java library of which we make use of, and then we create an object to say int is equal to new um, scanner, and it pass in a parameter. It takes in quite a number of parameters. It's usually used for reading. It can be used to read files and whatnot, and inputting variables from your keyboard, right? So you use a scanner class and to do that, right? So here INP is an object, and when I press INP just down here, dot, and press Control Space, wow, give me issues. Sorry, forgot to create a method. I'm just gonna create the main method, and yeah, that should work. So if I go here, Control Space, you're gonna see all these values in the IntelliSense that just popped up. We have for each remaining, a class has next, and so on and so forth, right? So these are all the functions that appear inside the class of the scanner. I'm not going to go into it, but these are the ones that actually pop up, right? So in this lesson, we're going to create our own object and make use of that. So in most cases, I would have gone to projects and then add a class, right? A new file, add a Java class. But just to keep everything in one place, I'm going to create the class just below the objects class, right? So I'm gonna say class. Let's name this one animal. So an animal, every class, right? Since it's a blueprint, it has attributes and functions, right? Functions being behaviors. So I'm gonna create a string called the name of the animal, the age of the animal, the height of the animal, what else? The weight of the animal. Right? And then from there, I'm going to use a constructor to initialize these values right here. So NetBeans provides an easy way to do that by just pressing LT and insert, or you can right click and click on insert code. So from there, click on constructors and then select all the checkboxes that appear and then press generate. And voila, provides that constructor for me with all the values initiated. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create getters and setters for the values so that we can manipulate them. Oh, I forgot one other thing. You have to use the private keyword here when you're initializing these variables, when you're declaring rather these variables, so that you can limit the type of access that a user or another programmer has to that class, right? So I declared all these things private so that you can only use the setter method and the getter method to actually do this thing. So again, I'm going to right click, insert code, insert a getter, check all the boxes, generate, and there are all my getters. And just to create some space here, I'm going to do that. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing for setters. So zip code and setters, check all of them, set the code, and again do the same thing just to save some space so that you can see most of what is happening. So you might have already seen me use this in the Java networking tutorials. It was basically the same thing. Sorry for the background noise that's going to be happening. I'm not in my room right now, so yeah. Okay, cool. So we have our animal class where we'll be setting and getting the name of the user or of the animal. But in this case, you might not necessarily make use of these setters because when you initialize the variables over here, up there with the constructor, you have all the values already set, right? So you use the setters in case you want to change the values of the already initialized setters of the initialized variables. Sorry, I'm just a little bit distracted. Something is happening outside. So yeah, from there on, I'm going to make an instance of that class, right? So I'm going to call the animal class and say an is equal to new animal. And as you can see, when I press Control Space, it already prompts me to enter the values right here, right? And one other thing I need to correct is this age is not supposed to be an integer. It's supposed to be an integer because you can't have, in fact, every other thing up here is supposed to be an integer. So I'm going to replicate, just going to put a semicolon here, enter, int. And this too is supposed to be floats or doubles. Sorry about that. Not doubles, just double. And this thing is giving me errors because I'm using the wrong data types, right? So I'm just going to delete everything down here and reinitialize it so that we get those values. So insert code, the getters, check every field. Down there, check every field, insert code for the setters. And voila, we have everything else. So again, up here, it's asking me to enter the values. So the name is a string, so I'm just going to enter dog, the age, let's say 2 years, age in years, the height, maybe, what should it be? How tall can a dog be? So let's just say 4 meters, and weight to be 12.5 kgs. I don't know if a dog can weigh that much. I don't have a pet. So yeah. And then from there, I'm just going to print its values to say if else. The values are I'm sorry, I'll have to cut this video a bit short. I have to attend to something else right now. But then I'm just gonna make use of what I've done right now. Right, so an dot get name plus it's gonna be hard to do, so I have to replicate Control C. So here I'm just gonna have to actually get name. What else do we have? The age, the height, the weight. Okay. So get name, get age, get height, delete that, and finally get the weight. And when I run this, run file, you're going to see just right at the side here of those values. Here, excuse me just one moment. So So those are the values that you get. And you can, as we have initialized all the values here using our constructor, you can pass this object to wherever you want and then use the getters right here to get the values as you had initialized them. Because what we did here is to pass all these values as we are instantiating into that AN value, right? So now everything is stored in there, and we can even pass this to another class. So maybe we're calling the database class that we have. So forgot what I named it. Let me just check. So it's called dbcon with a capital D. dbcon dot db, right? So in here, if we're passing the name, right? If we are passing it as an object, right? We just call the AN. Of course, it's going to give an error because it's not expecting that DB object, right? But inside the DB class, if we're actually going to call, in fact, let me just do it right here. Right, to say public void main, sorry, not main, just let me just call it test. And then in here, I can define that the type of object that I'm expecting is the animal, and then I'm gonna call it NN, right? And then down there, I'm just gonna print out these values. So instead of printing them up here, I'm just gonna cut and then paste them down there, and then call that method down here. So static. I'm so sorry for the noise in the background. So let's just call the test method and then pass that object. So, and again, I'm so sorry for the background noise that's happening. Yeah, there's people passing by over and over. So now, if I run this program right now, if we run it, it should still print the same values. Why? We told that our value here is expecting animal, right? Which is NN. And then from the NN, we pass the values, as we did right there. So this thing was expecting the NN object, the animal object, which we passed in by initializing the values up here, and then we can make use of them down here with the getters and the setters. And I hope that makes sense. I know it's a little bit complicated to use objects like this, but if you have any questions, please let me know so that I can explain a little bit further. But this is just the basics of using an object. So yeah, and again, all this code is available online. I'll share the link.